Hello, and welcome to Brass Bites. My name is Andy, and I will be your host. In today's episode, I chat with the brass band legend, Dr. Bob Childs. When it comes to banding, he's really left no stone unturned as a euphonium player and a conductor. From winning the Soloist Prize at the Granada Band of the Year to taking the Cory band to #1, we find out his process for success both on and off the stage. Bob is the head of brass band studies at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, where he teaches euphonium and conducting, inspiring generations of top brass players in the process. Bob's career has taken him across the world, sharing performances with his brother, Professor Nick Childs. So sit back and take in the wisdom of what Bob has to offer in episode 3 of Brass Bites. Good afternoon, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Andy, yourself?
Yeah, not bad. So welcome to Brass Bites. This is a new YouTube channel where we interview top players within the brass community to see how they do it and why they do it, and how we can learn from that. So let's start at the beginning. What influenced you growing up? I know you grew up in a very euphonium based household. So what were your early influences, and how do they actually continue to influence you as a musician today?
Yeah, well, my dad was a euphonium player, John Childs, and naturally he taught me to play. Started off on the cornet, not very good. Trombone, even worse. And then I got onto the baritone, and I stuck with that for quite some time until, as I say, my dad was a conductor of the Tredegar Town Band, which is a Welsh band just up the road from Cardiff, and he moved me from the baritone onto euphonium, and that was it really. You know, you probably, when you say about euphoniums in the house, you're probably talking about my brother Nick, which I know we're going to talk about a bit later on. But there's 5 years between Nick and I, and so you can imagine, like when I was 10, he was 5. When I was 15, he was 10. We didn't really play together much at all. And then I left Wales when I was 18 to go and play with the GUS band. And so there wasn't too much euphonium music going on in our house. Having said that, my elder sister played the cornet, and my younger sister played the baritone as well. So we're a real sort of musical family. But Nick and I didn't really start playing together until we both moved up to Yorkshire, and I was 25 and he was 20. All of a sudden, that age gap is much, much smaller. But my dad was an intuitive musician. He was a coal miner. We lived in a little mining village, so he earned his money from working underground. But as I say, he was an intuitive musician. He just knew how to shape a phrase, and he really prepared music from the heart. Didn't have all the technical skills, and so he would give me a lesson and say to me, right, tonight you're going to learn to triple tongue. Here's what it's all about, and here's a solo called Facilita. He says, I'll come back in a couple of hours and just work it out. And that's basically how I did it. And consequently, that's why I triple tongued for years the wrong way, doing dagada 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 instead of tadiga dadiga 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 dadiga. So I've learned both ways. I remember doing. My father would come home from work late. I mean, this is later after he got another job in the National Coal Board as a transport manager. He'd come home at lunchtimes to give me a lesson. So I had a lesson off my dad, quite a formal lesson, every day. But I have to say that most of those lessons ended in tears because he was a real taskmaster. I think he just got frustrated because he knew what he wanted me to do, but he couldn't really explain how to get there. Like I remember we were preparing for a solo competition, and I was playing "Abide with Me" and "Little's Abide with Me," and at the end there's the words are "in life, in death." And so I was playing do, re, do, do. These are these 4 words in life and death. And he'd say, no, 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 no. You go, in life, in death. And I didn't have a clue what he was on about. You know, he was just like telling, just no, 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 no. You got to do something with that note. You got to just press it a little bit, like just press on it a little bit. And then all of a sudden, I'd do something, and he'd say, "That's it, that's it." And I didn't have a clue what I'd done. But that's the way I was taught when I was taught to play, not using just the da and the ta that most brass players use. I was using the full alphabet of syllables and vowels, and so he would say, not, I want you to say that as if you're saying please, please. So PL, and it was all like that. It was very unconventional teaching, but he knew what he wanted, and in the end, I got it. And do you know what? In my teaching now, I'm 63 years old now. I still very much refer back to the teachings of my dad, but I do try not to make the students cry.
I think that's a very valid point. Actually, being able to have a variety of articulations, soft tongue and hard tongue, isn't just all you need. You need to be able to shape each note and craft each note. And I think that's great that you were sort of taught that, albeit in a in that style from a young age. And I guess that's also helped with your success as a conductor as well as a teacher.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot off my dad. He had the knack of making a 4th section band sound really good, and I still really haven't put my finger on what he used to do, but he took a couple of bands, the Cross Keys Silver Band and Tredegar Band. They were in the 2nd section when he got them. He took them up into the championship section. He took the Cross Keys Silver Band from the 4th section right up to the 2nd section, and with a nucleus of core of players. You know, he'd rewrite the test pieces to suit the players he had, and you know, he was a good politician as well. He was good at making people feel wanted and making them feel they're really contributing by cutting them out sometimes. You know, like it might be an old 3rd corner player with false teeth that doesn't make a very good sound, and he'd say to him, "Bill, you've got a massive sound there. I'm going to cut you out of that pianissimo bit, and because I want to save you for the big finish at the end." And you know, Bill would feel like, "Wow, that's great," but he's been cut out. I mean, my dad would have more people in a band than you could contest, but he wouldn't tell the people who was going to be dropped until the day of the contest. So they'd turn up with their uniforms and the walking out gear on, and they'd walk around with the band. They'd feel part of the day. They'd feel part of the performance. But you know, ultimately, like Sir Alex Ferguson, he would give his team sheet the rehearsal before the contest. He didn't want those people to stay at home and feel left out. You know, so that's the way he did it. He was a very inclusive guy.
I think that's kind of the essence of banding. It's definitely a community thing. Yeah. So going back to your playing, so you mentioned your early solo career. You were working towards solo competitions. I myself benefited from solo competitions from a young age, and for all the viewers, I recommend seeking out these solo competitions. I know they're dwindling in numbers, but there's so much you can learn from top adjudicators such as Bob. Go to these competitions and they'll give you really, really great feedback only to help you improve. And I think that's a great thing. So picking up on your soloistic playing, you've picked up many awards, such as the Soloist Award at the Granada Band of the Year. Can you just share with us some of your highlights?
Well, as I said, I'm 63, and I still play now, and so there's lots and lots of highlights that that's happened throughout my life. I think one of the earliest things was when I joined the Grindthorpe Colliery band on solo euphonium, aged 19, and they were like a professional band. You know, we all supposedly worked at the colliery, but in actual fact we didn't. We just got paid from the colliery, and so we just paid to play in the band, and everybody in the band were employed by Grindthorpe Colliery, which meant that we could accept jobs, concerts, anywhere, anytime. We'd go down to London and work throughout the day, doing a recording project. But one of the biggest highlights for me was when we toured Australia right back in 1980, a long time ago, and I got a concerto written for me by a composer called John Golland, and we were in Australia for about a month. We went to all the major cities in Australia and played in the major concert halls. And I remember giving the first performance of this Golland euphonium concerto in the Perth Festival Hall in Perth, Western Australia. But I'm even more proud of the second performance because that was in Sydney Opera House, and that was very special. I think then after Grindthorpe, it was always my ambition to play for Black Dyke. I went there. I was lucky to be there when James Watson was the conductor. He was a fantastic trumpet player, played in all genres of music, opera, symphony, was a founder of the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble. What he didn't know about music wasn't really worth knowing. And so he gave all that musical information out free of charge. I mentioned I still quote my father when I conduct bands now. I still find myself quoting Jim Watson an awful lot as well. And I think, you know, when you're a kid and you go and watch the bands at the Royal Albert Hall and stuff like that, I never ever thought that I'd play in a band and win those competitions, the British Open, the European Championships, and the National Championships to Great Britain in the Royal Albert Hall. But under the baton of James Watson, with my favourite band, the Black Dyke Band, we did it. And so they were things I never thought that would happen to me. I mean, there's been lots of passing exams and having awards from Worshipful Company of Musicians, getting the freedom of the City of London. There's a list of things that I can say that I've done, but the big things have been really special, and they're usually family connected as well. Watching my son win the brass section of the Young Musician of the Year in 2000 was a very special moment for me, and wouldn't have missed that for any of the awards that I've got over the years. Conducting with Cory, you know, that was just a wonderful experience that I don't know why it happened to me, but I just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and we clicked as a band, and we won everything. You know, became world champions, European champions, national champions, everything. It just happened. You know, those wonderful awards that you call them. You know, I could go on and on and on, but I don't like talking about them too much because I get a lot of glory, but in actual fact, you know, in a band, there's usually about 30 people with committees and players, and it's a massive team effort. One of the things my dad used to say was, you know, there's 25 brass players in a band. If they all give their 4%, that'll be 100%, and that'll be enough to win the contest. So it's a real team effort. I've been lucky to stand in front of these bands. Won the British Open with Grindthorpe, Cory, and Black Dyke. Can't want any more than that.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's interesting you mentioned your influences of James Watson. James Watson taught my my current trumpet teacher Ross Brown when Ross studied at the academy, And it's great to see how Jim's influences are actually still coming down through the generations. He was of the recordings that I've listened to him as both a player and a conductor. He was very calculated, and he knew exactly what he was doing, which made the music flow so effortlessly.
But it did. And one of the things about James Watson as a trumpet player was he's one of the finest phrasers of the instrument. He never took a breath. I don't know how he did it, but there's a really famous solo called Zelda by Percy Cord. And most trumpet players would take 4 breaths, and Jim just did it in 1. I mean, he was a big, tall guy. I guess he had great lung capacity, but I said to him once, how do you do that, Jim? How do you play for such a long period without taking a breath? And he said, well, I've got quite an unorthodox embouchure. He used to sort of tuck it up in his lip here, like that. And he says, once I've got it in there, once I've got that mouthpiece in there, I said, I don't really want to take it off. So I just keep going for as long as I can.
That's brilliant. Oh, so moving on, we mentioned your brother Nick as a people might know your brother Nick, Professor Nick Childs, as the conductor of Black Dyke. But as a euphoniumist, you did tour quite extensively as a duet artist. So I'm quite happy with the way I've worded this question, to be honest, because it's literally, you were the rock stars of euphoniums for the time. Sort of, what was it like living the rock star life as euphoniumist?
Well, I'm not sure I'd say rock star life, but I know exactly what you mean, because we toured Australia, Japan, America, all over Europe, and a lot of the times we were endorsing best and euphoniums, and we would stay in fantastic hotels, and we'd be treated like royalty, really, when we got to these places. The downside was that at that time, because we were talking about 1984 was the first time we played together, and we carried on for about 10 years doing that. And but at the same time, I wasn't working in a music conservatoire then. I was an engineer in a sauce factory, the Hammond Sauce Works, and I was entitled to 21 days off a year, plus statutory holidays. And of course, I was away all the time, and I made up some terrible stories to get off work. This one, so you got to try and imagine a sauce works. It's one big long conveyor belt with empty bottles one end and full bottles the other. They go through labelers, and they go through filling machines and all capping machines and all this stuff. And I was the guy in charge of maintaining these machines. That was my job then. I was a fitter turner, and I needed some time off to go on tour with my brother. And I knew that if I asked the company for more time off, they just said no. So I took the gamble and decided not to ask them. So I devised something else. So I was up working on this machine this one time, and you can imagine there's a lot of glass in a sauce works, because in those days it was just glass bottles, no plastic bottles. And I before I got up on this machine, I'd cut a hole in my shoe, and I also filled my shoe with tomato sauce. And so I got up on this machine, fixed it, and I jumped off the machine and pretended I'd landed on a piece of glass. And I took my shoe off, and it was all red, and my sock was all red. And so I had to go home, and then just phoned in and said, look, I've got 10 stitches in my foot. I'm not going to be. I can't walk. I'm not going to be around for a couple of weeks. I'm sorry. Oh, that's okay. Don't worry. As long as you're okay, you know. And then we went off to America. And
that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, for our listeners, so for our listeners, the sort of level of playing that both Bob and Nick were displaying can be searched on YouTube very easily, and I'll probably stick a link in the description below. There's some videos of you in Japan
Yeah.
playing so absolute some of the notes that you guys were coming up with, and the technical side, but also the musical side. There was something for everyone. It's definitely worth a listen. It's
Yeah, well,
definitely worth a good afternoon.
you were talking about the rock star lifestyle. So the thing is, we get treated like royalty and enjoy all this stuff, but then we'd get back to work on a Monday, and my foreman, my boss, would be telling me to crawl under that machine and grease this thing and switch the compressor on. All of a sudden, you're right back to earth with a massive bump, and that was quite difficult to accept sometimes.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, like there's definitely the double life of the
Yeah,
Charles brothers.
yeah,
So obviously, as a performer, doing all these performances, I know myself. I tend to overthink things, and that leads to anxieties and getting nervous. So, as a performer, do you personally get nervous? And if so, how would you combat that?
Well, getting nervous is the fear of the unknown, really. Um, and I used to tell myself, if I can play this piece, this solo, if I can play this like 9 times out of 10 without mistake, then why should I get nervous? I think I think people get nervous when they stood up and they know they've got to do something that 9 times out of 10 goes wrong, and they're just hoping that one time it's going to go right. Um, and also, I think that, as I say, the fear of the unknown. It's worth trying to analyze what it is that makes people nervous. Um, I know from my own point of view, I'd get sweaty palms, or my mouth would go dry, or uh, I'd, I'd be a little bit out of breath because my heart was beating fast. And I found that simulating those conditions is quite useful. So I used to sweat a lot, and my mouth used to slide around. So I practiced with Vaseline on my lips, and I'd walk up and down the stairs briskly to get my heart pumping. You know what I mean? And I'd purposely put washing up liquid on my hands, so it felt as if they were sweating. And then I'd play my solo in that situation, and it is a bit uncomfortable, but it's not as bad as you think. And so when you get on stage and the second person in your head starts talking to you like, "Oh, you're sweating, you're going to mess this up," or "Oh, your heart's beating fast, never done that before. This is a problem." There's always that devil side of your head that's trying to knock you down all the time. You can say, "Hold on a minute, I've practiced with Vaseline on my lips. I know what it's like. I know what this is like. I've practiced being out of breath. I've got a couple of extra breath marks in here. I don't have to worry about it." And that top C, I've transposed that section, so it's been a top D. So I'm not scared of the top C because I know I can get the top D. And that low note there, I've played that an octave lower. So it's bringing that, being able to answer the questions of the negative guy in your head, the one that always tells you that you're going to mess up. That's the problem. See, I'd always have someone else on the other side of my head, like my mother. She thought I could do anything. She thought I could be a surgeon or an astronaut or something. Oh yeah, if that's what you want to do, you do it. She's one of them. But it's answering those negative questions from the other side, and one way to do that is to try and simulate the conditions that you find yourself under. Unfortunately, if you're playing a piece of music that you can't play, then there's no answer to that. You will get nervous because sometimes it's not even 50-50 that you're going to play it right. But if you're playing something 9 times out of 10 correctly, there's absolutely no reason why you should get nervous.
That's definitely something to think about. Play within your capabilities. I know saying it to camera, that's probably that's not something that I have done. I definitely like to push myself, and probably too much, too often.
Yeah, but
Um,
what you should do, Andrew, is you should perform what you're good at, but practice what you're not very good at. And we used to be saying, don't hang your dirty washing out on the line. So if you can't triple tongue and you're only learning triple tongue, the last thing you want to do is perform something that's got triple tongue in it. You should practice it, and when it's really good, then perform it.
Definitely. And for me, for the last couple of years, for my recitals, I've had at least a plan A and a plan B. Plan A being great, my chops are feeling fantastic. Let's go and share this. And plan B is right. This is chops aren't so great today. Let's play this. And fortunately, in the brass department at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, we have Chris Williams, who's our accompanist, and he knows all the repertoire. So you could just rely on him to support you throughout the performance.
Yeah, Chris Williams is a fantastic pianist, full stop. And of course we've got other members of staff there now. Roger Argenti, world class bass drum player, is all right, and his predecessor, who I still got on with really well, Kevin Price. I find the Royal Welsh College of Music really warm. I've taught in universities and colleges all over the world, but I do find the Welsh College has got something really special to offer.
Definitely, especially with the large department that we have.
Yes.
There's definitely experiences that we can all share. I guess that's sort of what the art of performance is. Not performing, it's not showing. For me, it's about sharing, and I think that's what helps me sometimes combat nerves. Is actually I'm not here to show what I'm going to play. I'm here to share what I'm going to play. Um, so yeah, moving on. Uh, Again with Nick, you've done quite a lot of things. One of those things, moving on from being sort of to quote myself, rock stars. A part of that is recording,
Mm.
and you both set up Doyen Records, which are sort of the standard, and still even now the standard company for brass recording. Um, could you share a little bit about some of the experiences that you've had through that?
Yeah, well, the thing was, during that period that you're talking about, when my brother and I, Nick, were performing all over the place, and we were getting pieces written for us, commissioned especially for us, and we wanted to record them. We wanted to make a. Well, at that time it was 50-50 whether it was still black vinyl or it was CD, and so we asked a number of recording companies if they'd be interested in recording us, and unfortunately they weren't interested in two brothers who played the euphonium. So I was going over to America quite a lot to play with the River City band, and they're a professional band based in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, and they had a board of trustees with some really heavy hitting financial guys. They had the president of Westinghouse Corporation was on their board, and there was another guy that owned several factories. His name was Bill Adams, and I always used to stay with Bill Adams when I went to America, and I was telling him the story about the Charles brothers and all the rest of the stuff, and he says, "Well, how much do you want to make a recording?" And I said, "Well, I have no idea." He said, "Well, just tell me what you want, and you can pay me back whenever you sold your records and stuff." So he lent us the money. He lent us the money to record, and so we booked a studio and booked a recording engineer, and set about our first recording, which was called Child's Play, and we did it on a black vinyl disc and also CD. And the process of doing that recording ourselves, learning about the artwork, about the booklet, about the jewel cases, about editing, because in those days, although you could record 24-bit CD digital recordings, it was still very difficult to edit those recordings. You had to do a lot. It was like the old days. You had to do a lot of one takes with the digital recordings. And so we learned an awful lot about it, and we thought, well, we'll do another one. So our second recording was a more serious recording of euphonium music, where we played concertos and stuff. And by the time we'd done these two recordings, we were quite, expert at running a recording session. We knew we had to book a hall, we had to book a band, liaise with the conductors, all that sort of stuff. And so we called the recording company Doyen, and bands started asking us if they could record with us, and we did. That's what we did, and we did over 100 CDs. The company got a little bit too big for me. I had 2 children and a wife, and the company needed investment, so I actually pulled out and let my brother take over Doyen Recordings, and ultimately he sold the company to World of Brass. So World of Brass own Doyen now, but they're still happy to keep the name Doyen. So yeah, we had a fantastic time doing recordings. I mean, I think one of the most interesting recordings we did was one called The Trumpets. And Howard Snell, who of course was the principal trumpet of the London Symphony Orchestra at one time, he was going to conduct this group of trumpeters from all around the world. They were the finest trumpet players that you could assemble together. There was a guy called Anthony Plog. He was there. There was a Norwegian guy. I can't quite remember his name. But the star of the show was Adolf Herseth, the principal trumpet of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for some 40 years. And his nickname was Bud Herseth. And he was just a phenomenal player. And anyway, this week that we were recording in Yorkshire, it was my job to go to the hotel and pick him up. So every morning I'd go and knock on his door, and I had this 25-minute window of opportunity to learn as much as I could from this great man. And so I'd say to him, "What mouthpiece are you using, Mr. Herseth?" And he'd just look straight forward. He wouldn't even answer. Didn't want to engage in any conversation at all. And then I says to him, "How do you get such a big tone in the top register?" And he still kept looking forward and didn't want to talk to me about it. I said to him, "What trumpet do you use?" And you run out of questions in the end. And he just turned to me and he says, "Too much analysis leads to paralysis." So he said, basically he's saying, don't even think about it, just play. You know what I mean? And so the next day we drive into the recording studio, and I said to him, "Wonderful countryside, isn't it? The Yorkshire Dales." And he started talking, and I could not stop him. He was talking about the oak trees, about the lay of the land, about similarities between Yorkshire and America and all this. He just didn't want to talk about brass playing. He didn't like teaching. He just thought that if he took a picture of himself and tried to analyze what he was doing, then he might have got it wrong, and it would change something that would make him a totally different person. I mean, there's another bloke that was like that, probably another world-class player, Maurice Murphy. He didn't like talking about playing. He really didn't like talking about it. As opposed to people like Paul Archibald and Jim Watson, Howard Snell, they analysed everything, and because of that, they were great teachers. Not to say that Maurice Murphy and Bud Herseth wasn't great teachers, because there's lots of aspects to teaching. If you can listen and watch an absolute professional, world-class brass player playing their instrument at the highest level, that gives you such inspiration. much more inspiration sometimes than a set of lessons. Just watching them, somebody do something is amazing. I remember the great Don Lusher, trombone player. He used to play this piece, and the trombone player at Black Dyke at the time said to me, I kept listening to Don Lusher playing this glist, but he said it just sounded like valves. He says I didn't get it. He said I didn't get it for years, and then I went to listen to a concert with Don Lusher playing. He says, and it was a glist that went up, so you'd expect the slide to go from out to in, but he did it the other way. He went up, but the slide went out, and it broke these harmonics into a. And the guy at Black Dyke says, if I could have only seen him 10 years ago, I would have known what he was doing. So seeing a top professional, can really help.
Definitely. I think it's great to listen to recordings, and you can learn so much just by listening to phrasing and how people articulate notes. That's all fantastic, but actually there are some things that you just need to watch. Like you can't really hear people breathing on a recording, but actually seeing people live. I know myself watching videos and listening and watching Phil Cobb, his breathing is very noticeable. It's definitely something that you can't pick up in the recordings. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And also mentioning from the Bud Herseth story, the legend that he is, I guess that there's, for players like himself and Maurice Murphy, they've got to have a work-life balance and sort of separating themselves just to, I guess, to keep us all sane, really. Absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, you're obviously.
You're talking about the physical things about watching players. I remember going to a Black Dyke rehearsal, sitting behind the basses, and of course, unlike an orchestra where you only have one tuba player, or a wind band where you have one or maybe two, there's 4 tuba players in a brass band. That's part of the homogeneous sound of the band. That's part of the very deep sound that the brass band makes. But what was interesting, there was these four bass players, and the art of shadow breathing, your dovetail breathing, they'd got it off to an absolute fine art. You could see their bodies expanding when they took a breath. So there'd be 2 on the outside, they'd be expanding out, when the 2 on the inside would be going in. Honestly, it was like watching the crankshaft of a piston engine. It's like, and any young tuba player that would have been in that room, first of all, you'd have noticed how physical it was, them taking the breath, but also how organized they were. They instinctively knew what the player next to them was doing, and I think that's an art in itself as well. When you watch principal cornet players and principal euphonium players, people who have another person playing the same part as them, and you can either sit there and not talk and not communicate and just do your own thing, or you can work as a team. And if you work as a team, you achieve more than twice as much. I think a brass band has great synergy for that. I mean, you listen sometimes to some of the weaker players in some of the bands, and you just think to yourself, how does that band sound so good when there's these players in these positions that are not tip-top sounding players, but they do contribute. And the overall sound is so much better than the sum of the individual parts. And I think that working as a team in music is so that's the game. Playing with people, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of one of the reasons why 2020 has been quite a difficult year for especially bands, really, because it's such a social thing, playing together and performing together. So going into your banding even more as a conductor, you've done it all really. You've won so many major competitions, conducting Cory, and other bands. You sort of, as a conductor and adjudicator, what is the success? What is the secret to success for a successful contest performance?
It's easy. It's called preparation. You just have to prepare. Players have to prepare, and conductors have to prepare. Um, it's not the way that we prepare for competitions is unlike any other musical form of preparation. You know, I've sat in rehearsals with symphony orchestras with the very finest conductors, and they don't do what we do. They don't have the time to do what we do. I mean, you know yourself as a brass band player, Andrew. You know, we'll get a 15-minute piece, and we might well spend 40 hours on that piece. And a conductor will spend even more time preparing the rehearsals. So, like for instance, to give you an idea where that time goes for a conductor, when I get a new piece, I'll first thing I'll do is draw a graphic score of the piece. What I mean by that is I'll get a piece of paper, and across the top I'll get the number of bars that's on it. So say there's 300 bars, I'll put 300 across the top, and I'll divide the sections of the piece up according to how many bars are in that section, and then I'll draw horizontal lines. I'll have one-headed dynamics, one-headed style, one-headed solos, and so on that one piece of paper, just on that one sheet, I can see the shape and all the styles that are, and where the loudest point in the piece is, where the softest piece is. Just on that one piece of paper, I can see this whole piece. Because as players, when I was a euphonium player, I'd get a new piece of music, and if it was 4 pages long, that was quite long. But when you're a conductor, and you sometimes get scores of 75 to 100 pages, it's difficult for you to see that whole piece. So a graphic score is a good idea. I'll photocopy the score for learning purposes. Maybe make it a bit bigger, and I know some of your listeners might not believe this, but anybody that's played in my bands know it's true. I then go through everybody's part, putting a circle around their staccatos, overwriting with a red pen the accents, the crescendos, anything that's on there, Italian terms. And I'll make a note on top of my score where I found some things that are different, like maybe the tenor horns mark mezzo forte and the back row corners mark mezzo piano. So I'll make a little note of that on top of the score. Now, this process takes me, or used to take me, anything between 1 week and 10 days. Getting up in the morning, coming to my desk and doing that. This is before I take the piece to the band. So I'll then play through the piece on my euphonium, play through everybody's part, and see where I can help with the fingering, or see where I think the breathing is difficult, or how to shape the phrase. And with a pencil, I'll mark on what I found. Invariably, I found mistakes in the publishing. You know, there'd be wrong notes I'd find. I'd put them at the bottom, and then that means I get a chance to phone the composer up and say, "Just got your new piece. It looks absolutely fantastic. Just want to ask you a few questions. The second corner's got an F sharp at so and so, and the solo corner's got an F natural. Is that correct?" And then he'd say, "It's either correct or it's not correct." But now I've engaged with this composer, so now I can ask him the deep questions about the piece that other conductors don't get to ask, and so I get the inside story of the piece, and then that can make a little bit of a difference. I'll then go to band and we'll start learning the piece, and we'll learn it in 2 main ways really, and that's born out of watching the Black Dyke Band working with a resident conductor and then a professional conductor. They had Roy Newsom, who was fantastic at getting all the notes in the right place, in tune, getting the piece prepared for Major Peter Parks to come along and sprinkle his magic dust on. So that first score that I'd have, that would be like my Roy Newsom score. That would be me putting all the nuts and bolts together. If there's certain things that can't be done, and like my dad, I'd rewrite it for somebody else to play if there's a better player, until in the end we've got it that we can't play it any better. It's technically correct. And what my dad used to say was, music comes after perfection. And so once I got that piece perfectly right, then I throw that score away, well, put it in the cupboard, and I get the new score out and look for much more higher order skills like tone quality, and check for the intonation, phrasing, color, balance, nuance, all those sorts of things. And it would just lift the performance up. And I'd record the band in rehearsals, go home, and I could. My wife coming into me sometimes at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and say, you're not even out of your pajamas. I'm just there, and I'm listening to the. I sort of developed this art of what I call specific listening, and so I'd listen to the test piece through, but I'd only be listening for intonation, making notes. I'd listen to the piece through, just watching for dynamics and listening for dynamics. Uh, I could then I'd check all my tempos, specifically listen to. So I've listened to the piece 3 times there. Then I'd listen to the corners. I mean, the whole band would be playing, but I'd be specifically listening for the corners, or specifically listening for the other sections of the band. So I could find myself listening to that piece 15, 20 times in a day. But when I go to band practice in the evening, I'm bursting with things to say, bursting with things to do. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, definitely.
the other thing I
I've
do.
I've seen your students do the score preparation, because you teach a master's course at the Royal Welsh College for brass band conducting and wind band conducting, and I have seen people in the student union sat there with large scores with a whole pencil case full of different colours, all marking their scores. It's definitely a process, and it makes a difference.
It's definitely a process, and I've got to say, I'm not advocating this for concert performances. I'm certainly not saying it's the right way to prepare music. What I'm saying is, the question you asked me was, how did you win competitions? And see, if you there's a thing called marginal gain.
Yes,
and
definitely.
if you can get 1 point there, 1 point there, 1 point there, in the end it builds up to like 10 points maybe, and that's how you win. But if I was conducting the band at the concert, I'd do what all the other conductors do. Just go straight in there, listen carefully, just pick on the low points, put them together, work on the transitions, because that's always the difficult parts of pieces, and conduct off a nice clean score. But if you want to win that contest, you've got to be more prepared than any player in the band. And one of the things I say to all my players is, I can put my hand on my heart and say, I've prepared my score. I've really done everything I can do. I've contacted the composer. I've got the inside story of the piece. Now, what you've got to do is you've got to win your contest individually. So, Mr. Solo euphonium player, you have to be the best euphonium player on the day. Mr. Third corner player, you have to win the contest for third corner players. You have to be the best third corner player on the day, because if several people in the band win their individual battles, and there's several people in the band that are not bothered, and they don't win theirs, then they bring the overall standard down. So you got to motivate the players that they all want to win their own individual battles. And if everybody wins, if everybody's the best on the day, then the band will be the best. And with a bit of luck, if we get a good draw and the adjudicator likes it, then we'll win.
It's definitely something that people can learn from, all our viewers. Maybe for contests, individual. So for me, I remember doing Triumph of Time with the Tom Winlights band at Blackpool. I don't think we got a great result. I think we still pre-qualified to stay in the section for the next year, which I guess was the main thing that we could take away from that. But I do remember getting my part and listening to it so much. And I do remember you saying in a masterclass. I went to a brass band day. I think it was in Taunton once, and somebody asked you, "What's your favourite test piece?" And you just said, "Oh, whichever one I'm working on," because you're
Exactly.
so obsessive, and it's definitely something that we can all learn from, especially even for solo rep as well. You got to like really focus. Look at the piano score, know exactly what the piano player is going to do, or the band. Just having that preparation, sort of knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So moving on from continuing into your conducting highlights, I think one major popular video of Cory band is the 2008 brass in concert performance, of which there was the drummers playing on the bar stools. Uh, how did that come about?
Well, entertainment contests, you got to look for something a bit different. So I'm always searching YouTube and other platforms to try and find musical ideas. I was watching one the other day where a percussion group were actually playing plastic drain pipes and stuff, and you can just imagine trying to incorporate that in a piece of music. But I'd spotted the top secret drummers of the Swiss Army playing these stools and doing all these fancy things with the sticks. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if our percussion section can do that. And at the time, the percussion section at Cory Band, a lot of them were either Welsh College students or past students. And so they were classically trained. They could do anything. And so I asked one of them to look at this video and see if they could uh, copy it. And they came back. They came back with it. It was fine. And and what I wanted to do next was try and find a piece that had some connection with it, both musically and historically. And I came up with Sing Sing Sing, and Sing 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 is about the same. It's about the same tempo that these guys were doing the thing. So, and also Sing 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 has a succession of drum breaks in it. Uh, there was Sing 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 was a famous piece that was played at Carnegie Hall, and the drummer the drummer that was famously linked to all these drum breaks was a guy called Gene Krupa, and so this piece Sing Sing Sing, it was synonymous with drum playing, and so it was the ideal piece. It was the right tempo. So we did the traditional drum breaks that Sing 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 Sing, but the fourth one, the guys came out the front with the stools, did that, and the audience went crazy. And then they went back again. We finished off with the last bit of Sing Sing Sing, and I'm sure that contributed to success. But I mean, that's a 3-minute piece. If you think about the rehearsal we put into it, think about the research that we put into it, think about the time that the drummers rehearsed it. So I come back to that word, preparation. You have to put the time in. If you don't put the time in, usually you're not successful.
Definitely, like you can have a absolutely fantastic idea, but unless you actually put the work in and, as you say, prepare, the idea is just it won't have life. It won't do what it
I
was
mean,
there for.
a classic example is the Brass in Concert Championships, which is a wonderful competition. That actually my father-in-law was one of the founding instigators of that contest, Peter Hartley. But that always takes place in November. So bands go on a summer break, in August, and then they come back and they're straight into the British Open, which is a test piece. Then they're straight into the Nationals, which is another test piece. So now, there you go. Now it's second week in November, and they start thinking about Brass in Concert. It's just not enough time. You've got to be thinking about Brass in Concert in January. You've got to be finding the material that you want. You've got to be commissioning arrangers to do things. You've got to work out all your choreography so that players in the band can learn the parts from memory. All of that process is impossible to do in a month. It needs to be done 9 to 12 months before. and that's again preparation.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that we could all take into all of our day-to-day lives. Um, I watching that video at that time. Ian Williams was the principal cornet. Uh, the absolutely phenomenal cornet player, technically, and his sound and his phrasing, sort of the complete cornet player. So what was it like working with such class?
Oh, Ian was one of the most natural cornet players I've ever come across. And one of the things that I found frustrating sometimes was I'd learned through playing duets with my brother that sometimes if you split things up, like you take a bar, you take a bar, you take a bar, you can make it sound really clean. So I'd spend quite a bit of time sorting the cornet section out, that they all play a little bit each together. And Ian would say, "Oh, Bob, I don't want to be," he said, "I don't want to cause you trouble or anything. I'll do exactly what you want, but I just find it easier playing it all." And he would. He just like what appeared to me to be impossible, he'd just do it. And he didn't know how he did it. He just did it. I mean, I was, when I had that band, the Cory band, I had David Charles on solo euphonium, an amazing player. I had Chris Thomas on solo trombone. Chris is a fantastic trombone player. You don't have to. I didn't have to teach him. I didn't have to say anything to him. I had a number of good horn players, but Owen Farr was my solo horn player. Um, my daughter-in-law Joanne, who was married to David, what a flugel player! I mean, she could play so soft and beautiful as well. She'd fetch a bird off a crumb with her playing. It's absolutely fantastic. And then I had Bert Van Tien on soprano from Belgium, and Michelle Ibbison as well from Black Dyke. She used to come and play so. But it was the other players. I was saying about third and second corner players needing to win their contests and be specialised. Ian Williams was a specialised soloist who could play high notes and play fast notes. And my back row, they were specialists at playing middle to low register. And I used to have one second corner player that specialised in playing really soft, and one second corner player that specialised in playing really loud. And so I could just click my fingers and we could get the soft team, get the soft team to play, or everybody plays loud stuff. My daughter Lisa, she played on second corner, and she could play on the front row. In fact, she played second man on Albion in the Royal Albert Hall. Second man, she's a lady, uh, second woman. But she just loved playing second corner, and she was proud of the fact that she was the best second corner player. All those prizes that we won, all the British Opens and all that, she won her contest.
Definitely, and I think even playing in ensembles like as a trumpet player, as a trumpet choir, there's definitely those that can sit on top and play all the technical stuff. And myself personally, that's not really something that is specialist for me, but actually, um, I know that I can play a much rounder bottom G,
Yeah.
and so then I take pride, and I really do take pride in sort of laying the foundation, um, so that those players can shine a bit brighter.
Well, yeah, and you got supporting players like, I mean, Chris Turner, who teaches at the Royal Welsh College of Music. Uh, he studied at the Guildhall. He's a great trumpet player, piccolo player, play flugelhorn, play the cornet. I've done recordings with Cory, with Chris playing on soprano. Uh, to have someone like Chris Turner on assistant principal, it was just like amazing. I should talk about Sue Thomas, Chris Thomas, his wife. She was the solo baritone player when I was there. She just did it. She didn't know how she did it. She just, whatever came along, she played it. And the bass section in the band, that was very special as well. Simon on E flat bass, and John Prosser, who was in the band. You know, they knew how to win. They'd won a hat trick of nationals before ever I got there, and the Cory journey was fantastic. But I finished at the right time. When I finished, they were #1 in the world. They were going to Australia on tour, and they had money in the bank. And so that was a good time for me to leave. And there's nobody more proud of the fact that they're still at #1, and they're still winning the prizes. In fact, they're winning more prizes. But I'd like to think that I had some part to play in teaching those guys how to win.
Yeah, and I think you have. It's definitely bands are so fortunate, or players are so fortunate to be able to sit in a band that has already established itself in a higher section, and sort of being part of that team and being almost I don't want to say dragged up to their level, but you kind of do. Your playing does sort of get pushed into definitely in the right direction. It's great. So as we've said before, you are currently the head of brass or the head of brass band studies at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama, and obviously we're in a, a changing period. I guess it's a challenging period either way. Um, Brass bands can't go into the hall and knock out a concert like they usually do. Um, so uh, obviously, I know what the adaptations have been. Could you just share how you've had to uh, change how you work and how the students have to work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like now we're doing this interview on Zoom. Last year we wouldn't have done it on Zoom, would we? I'd have come into college and we'd have set a camera up and we'd have done it a different way. So there's pluses and minuses in this terrible pandemic that we're in, coronavirus, COVID-19, and there's obviously 10 times more minuses than pluses. But there are little pluses. You mentioned about solo competitions and that. What bands are doing now? In fact, I was down with my band, the Woodfalls band, just last night, with a group of 6 of them doing sextets, and and I'm working with the second corner player and the third corner player, players that a lot of time you don't hear them. You don't hear them in a normal band, but I can hear them now, and we can work together. And actually, the art of playing ensemble music is a bit of a lost art. Last night we were playing Wilfred Eaton's Toccata, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. So we'll have another group of 6 next week. Oh no, not next week, because England's on lockdown. But we do virtual lessons sometimes at college over Zoom like this. It's important that the students get the right equipment, the microphones and such like, because although Zoom and Teams and other platforms are good for conversational communication, they're not very good for a trumpet or a euphonium. The level of volume that we have, the dynamic is too big for most microphones built into a computer. So they have to try and get the right equipment, and we do that. Work with smaller groups. I did a concert last month at the Royal Welsh College of Music and featured some 6 small ensembles, which would have been a brass band concert. I've got a concert on Saturday. It's called a fireworks concert, because people would usually have come to our concert and then gone into the park just outside and watched the fireworks. Well, there's no fireworks and there's no brass band, but we're still doing a concert, and we're doing, one of the pieces we're doing is Glinka's Ruslan and Ludmilla, which the players have just thoroughly enjoyed working on. They love it. So from a musical point of view, there's pluses and minuses, but I'm sure I speak for everybody. I feel sorry for all our professional colleagues. You can imagine all those professional players up in London, in all those orchestras, session players. They've not worked since March. some of the world's finest musicians in London are now delivering for Tesco to make ends meet. We're going to have brass bands that haven't played together since March, and I'm not sure if those players will get used to not going to band practice. I'm sure that we'll lose some players along the way. So I can't wait for this pandemic to go away. I don't think it's going to go away until we get a vaccine. I think once we've got a vaccine, it'll be a slow process of getting people shoulder to shoulder in a compact concert hall. They lack confidence to do that. But you know, it's a difficult time for everybody. But the little bit of music making that we're able to do, I'm trying to enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. Like it will be a difficult road back. There's no denying that. And I am quite fortunate as a student. I am able to go into college, and I am able to share music with others. As you mentioned, the concert on Saturday, I'm fortunate enough to be playing in that concert, and I'm very, very excited for a playing opportunity. Um, and you also mentioned solo competitions. There's been some online ones, of which a recording from that concert, and I was there in the audience, and it sounded amazing. The work that was being done. One of those performances was submitted to the Foden's Band um, ensemble competition, and yeah, you guys won, and that was just having a smaller ensemble play. It was a test piece, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah, Morley Calvert piece for a Canadian composer that was originally written for the European Championships, the very first European Championships held in London in 1978. And it's worth mentioning that we entered 3 ensembles into that competition, and we came first and second. And I have to take my hat off to a band like Foden's, who are trying to keep the movement going. You know, they're not just sitting on their hands and waiting for the vaccine to come, then they go back to band practice. They are proactively trying to promote brass playing during this pandemic.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and yeah, we all commend the work that they're doing. They're definitely holding people together, especially bands like Cory as well, with the
Oh
online
yeah,
band contest, and they are going to run another one. So we'll
yep.
be interested to see what people come up with for that. Um, so yeah, going back to because you're obviously the head of brass band studies at Royal Welsh College of Music. Um, so you sit on the panel for auditions every year. I know this year you've had to do them online, but how would you? What advice would you give to a student to prepare for an audition in front of you? I think my audition was in front of you. It was in
Probably
front
was.
of you. It was a no, it
Probably was.
wasn't. Sorry, it was in front. My audition was in front of Tom Hutchinson and Andy Everton.
All right, very good. Well, I think that the first thing is the choice of music that you perform in an audition is so important, because you know you're going to get a bit nervous, and we all get a little bit nervous. But if you choose something too ambitious, then, like I said before, you know, you'll get those niggling questions, and you'll be more nervous than you should be. So try and choose music that really shows you off to your strong points. Play music that you can play well, because when we sit on these panels, we're not looking for great players. We're looking for players who have great potential, and we can see that by players playing pieces that they can play well and shape and it's been polished up, rather than someone going for something that they'd probably play in their 4th year at college, and it'll be a bit rough, and it doesn't do any justice. The other thing is, you know, if you're going to audition to a music conservatoire, uh, at some point you got to learn the skills, and so come to your audition knowing your skills. It's important. I know I'm 63 and I know the importance of skills, but I remember when I was young and I couldn't see the benefit of them at all. So I understand where young people are coming from when they say, "What's the point of learning skills?" I got it, but unfortunately, they will understand and get the answer when they're a bit older. So skills, that's good. And I think, I don't know if there's any oral involved these days. And if there is, it's just practice, you know. If someone's sitting at the piano and they play a note on the piano and they ask you to sing that note back, if you've never ever done that little experiment, then you're probably going to get it wrong first time. Not because you haven't got any pitch, but because you've never done that little exercise. So just go to the piano and play a few notes, sing the note, play a few notes, sing a few notes, play a few intervals, and see if you can recognize them. Because sometimes auditions are that close. You know, if we've got a college full of trumpet players, even if a great trumpet player comes to audition, we're probably not going to take them on because we've already got enough. That we haven't got any euphonium players this year. And so whoever comes along, providing they're just about good enough, they'll get in. So you need a bit of luck to get into a music college as well, because it's all about supply and demand. And but that's what I would say is prepare, look smart, first impressions are everything. You know, I'm a bit old-fashioned. I like to see that students, when they come in for an audition, that they think it's important. And the one way that they can show me that this event is important is by dressing smartly. I'm not saying put a three-piece suit on, but I'm saying don't turn up with holes in your jeans and, you know, yeah, well, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So,
definitely. It's actually a great tradition in the brass department, especially for performance classes, to treat it as a performance instead of a class. So, I mean, for me, I definitely iron my shirt in the morning. And I make sure that everything is looking good. I think that also helps psychologically, because if you look good, you might feel good.
yeah.
So it's playing smart and the preparation, and I think that's what we can kind of take from all of today. It's definitely preparation and play smart.
I mean, like you know, you're going to get asked questions, and you know that at the end, the examiners are going to say, "Have you got any questions for us?" And the amount of times that students sort of say, "No," do you know who your trumpet teacher's going to be? No. Why have you come to Cardiff then? Oh, I think Cardiff's a great city, really good. You know, they haven't really thought about how the impression that they're going to give. I mean, he says, so why have you come to Cardiff? Well, I've heard it's a great nightlife. Cardiff Bay is fantastic.
To be fair, it is.
I know it is, but you want to
Yeah.
I come to Cardiff because my professor's going to be so and so, and because they've looked at what the website and they can see everything about it. I mean, at the end of the day, look, if a student is thinking about going to a music college, that means that they're going to invest in the region of £60,000 on their education. And I'm not exaggerating there, am I? I mean, it's £9,000 a year, 4 years, plus living, eating,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So why would you want to spend £60,000 and not know what you're going into?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
there's various colleges dotted around Great Britain, and you want to find the one that suits you. So you got to do your research. And is £60,000 a good enough incentive to do that? Well, yes, of course it is.
Yeah, and I remember on my first day, or the first time that you took a class of brass players. I think it was just an induction thing. You said if you miss a lecture, you may as well go to the bank, get out 40 quid in pound coins and tip it down the drain. And it is literally that is right. And uh, I, I can't think of any lecture unless I was ill that I've missed purely because that is literally it. Um, like I've always got questions because I guess that's kind of one of the inspirations to why I've set up this channel. But sort of a final question. I know it is probably play smart and prepare. But one final bit of advice for any brass player, really, just looking to go take it to the next level, sort of lockdowns, all that. We've got time to practice. So, yeah, what would you say just to take it one notch higher?
It's simple. It is. My dad used to tell me this, and it's very short. Takes about 5 seconds to say. Basically, play with better players than yourself until you become better than them. Play music that you can't play until you can play it. That'll make you a better player.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Bob. It's been a absolute pleasure, and I look forward to hearing how people have learned and incorporated this into their day-to-day practice.
Okay, and well done for doing this, Andrew. It's a good initiative, and wish you all the best with Brass Bites.
What an inspiration that was. I hope that you have learned as much as I have from this episode. Huge thank you to Dr. Bob Giles for sharing his time and experience with us so that we can take our playing to the next level. Check out the links in the description to find out more about Bob, and if you enjoyed this episode, check out our other episodes on the channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to receive notifications when a new video is released, and follow us on social media at Brass Bites. If you have any comments, please leave them below or email us at brassbites@outlook.com. But for now, keep blowing, and I'll see you next time.